How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Still.
Venerian.
And Willisell, and we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry of the week and not the electoral process in the United States, if at all possible.
Yeah, we'll try to steer clear of that. Please.
As much. We will endeavor to keep it to a minimum. I make no promises for anything.
Well,
Yeah.
that's as good as can be expected, I suppose.
If you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server, which you can get to by clicking the link provided in the description underneath the video show archive on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. So, on the stream today, I'm going to be playing a bit of Grounded, which is also the game that's probably taken up most of my gaming time this week. It is an early access game, but I saw it in the Windows Live Store, and because why not? I'll give it a go. What it is essentially it is, I guess, Subnautica meets Honey I Shrunk the Kids. You are one of these four, I guess they're teenagers, I don't know. You get shrunk down, and you need to figure out how to get yourself unshrunk. In probably the biggest game world we've ever seen is One Backyard. Let's see. So, I'll be playing a bit of that on the stream. One thing I will actually point out is the spiders in this game are a big thing. Quite literally, actually. They're the size of buses. They have an arachnophobia mode. And what you can do... So, I'll show you actually here on the screen. What we have here is a regular spider. It is still kind of a bit cartoony because of the art style, but you can turn it down by stages, a little bit at a time. So it starts off shrinking them a little bit, then it starts removing legs, then it removes all the legs, the mandibles, and then it just starts looking more and more like a floating potato. So,
it's cynical of me to say this, but I feel like the main reason that arachnophobia mode gets put into games has nothing to do with arachnophobia and more to do with the entertainment gleaned by the development team trying to figure out how they're planning to do their arachnophobia mode.
Yeah. Like, this is the second best arachnophobia mode I've seen. The best still remains with Satisfactory, where the spiders are still there. They're not actually spiders, but they're close enough. But on your vision, they're just overlaid by crappy JPEGs of cats. It is the best thing.
Yeah, you see, that to me that would. I feel like that doesn't actually solve the problem because that's just the spider you can't see.
Yeah, it does make them actually harder to
fight. I'm sure
fight.
it's terrifying. I'm sure that's terrifying to people with arachnophobia. There's they know there's a spider there, but they can't see it because it's hiding behind something.
Yeah, in this case, a crappy JPEG. I guess I'll go with the serious girl this time. Like, you got your four stereotype teens. You got, I guess he's the jock, the cool one, the serious chick, the nerd, and the kooky one. We'll go with the serious one. So yeah, it takes a lot. Grounded takes a lot of notes from, so far anyway, from Subnautica. It's not the same team at all. This one's done by Obsidian. But you have this overarching story which you need to explore the world in order to figure out what it is. And there is ultimately, or rather there will be, because this is early access, a actual end goal. So I'm just going to play a bit of that. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. Combat in this game is very hands-on, which is actually, I think, where the arachnophobia mode might come to bite them in the arse. Because you need to be able to watch your enemy in order to see their tells and know when to block or run away.
I do not think anybody's actually going to play that game with the arachnophobia mode turned on.
Yeah,
if they're seriously playing.
If that's going to be an issue, I think this is probably the wrong game because, yeah, the smallest spider comes up to about your knees. The largest spider is the wolf spider, and it will just eat your face. But it is... yeah, the size of a large bus. Incidentally, don't poke wolf spiders, because that will never end well for you. But yeah,
Let's see.
when you reduce a spider down to just a potato with googly eyes on it, it kind of makes it hard to tell what their actual tells are. So actually, I might do that. Let me see options. Where are we? Accessibility, arachnophobia. Okay, I've got the spiders in potato mode. So instead of actually going and finding the story, I'm just going to run around because I think I remember where a couple of spiders can be found. I want to see how they actually look in the game. Yeah, it's very open-ended. Like as you can't as soon as you from the I can't words. From the word go, you can pretty much just come out of that starting little tunnel and just go wherever you want. Let's see. Map. Yeah, the map's actually quite large, but at the moment you've really just kind of got the front half of the backyard, and that's it, really. There's still kind of this bit up the side over here, and then the entire back half of the yard that still needs to be put into the game. So the story and the game is far from complete. No idea how long that's going to take.
Early access.
Early access. Hey, I didn't pay money for it.
I guess it's true, but
Technically. But I think this is definitely a game to keep an eye on. Like, Subnautica, when they did that whole thing, did pretty much everything right. Like, maybe they could have improved a few things here and there, but as far as exploration games go, that was pretty much dead on. Okay, I know there's a spider in there. I'm not going to go to that one, because that's a wolf spider down in there.
and that's bad.
And that's bad. And this wolf spider down here in particular hides in a cave, and you don't know about it until it's already on top of you and eating your face. So I'm not going to mess with that. Actually, I know where I'll go. I'll go this way. Anyway, while I do that, other things I did during the week. I caught up on a few anime, just keep watching Black Clover and things like that. I'm not entirely sure I enjoy what they've done with Gordon now. Like, Gordon in that game anime was very quiet and very out of the way and very creepy. At some point in the last arc, he kind of came out of his shell, so now he's louder and closer and still very much creepy. So, yeah, that's a thing.
I think you're making a distinction without a difference here.
I think I might be. But, yeah, it's kind of in the in-between major arc silliness at the moment. So, like, there's stuff that's important to the story going on. Like, you just had that rather grim arc of all the people with no magic actually kind of having had enough after the aftermath of the whole demon and elf thing. And the fact that they're holding Asta up as some sort of messiah doesn't help.
Yeah, I think they need to pick their messiahs a bit more carefully.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Here's a spider. Oh dear. Oh dear. It's angry. I can kind of tell what it's doing. Sort of. It's also stuck on that tripod leg, so that's fun. Yeet. Yeah, okay. So that's what a spider looks like when you reduce it right down. It's two shiny balls and a pair of googly eyes.
I see googly eyes, eh?
I'm just going to run away. Leave it be. But anyway, the anime I've watched probably the most of is I sat down and actually watched Digimon Adventure, the new one.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
This is like a from scratch reboot, this one, right?
Yes, it's a alternate timeline, so it does mean that it's a new plot, or by and large it's a new plot. Like, Devimon is still kind of one of the big bads around, and I'm expecting a Pokemon to pop up out of the bushes at some point. Although, given that it's not...
That took like 2 years for him to pop out of the bushes.
Yeah, but he was very
originally.
firmly hiding in those bushes the entire time.
A Pokemon only shows up like in the last few episodes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's only even mentioned at the very end.
Like, they're in some like 100+ episode series. He's there for 3 of them and mentioned in like 5.
Yeah. But Yeah, in this case, I've watched up to date now. The story is still ongoing because they took a giant break because of the plague. But the biggest and nastiest thing that they've fought at this point is Nidhoggmon, which may or may not be something entirely new for this one. I don't know.
That sounds new,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't
So
know.
it's kind of weird, this thing, because I know the original exists, and I know the original can be very light and very silly sometimes. First, and that's, I think, is illustrated because the reboot has no Etamon.
Yet.
So
He was my favorite villain.
Etamon was the best part of that whole thing.
Edamon didn't come out until like the third or fourth arc, though. Anyway, so
About
But no,
episode
Edamon was the
20-ish?
second big villain.
Yeah,
was he the second major
Edamon
one?
was before Myotismon.
yeah.
I was thinking there was a
I think it
mini
was-
arc in between Devimon and Edamon, but I might be
If
wrong.
there was a mini arc, it would have been like filler episodes.
Yeah.
Because
Maybe.
he was the next major villain.
I think he was the first consistent villain, too.
Well, yeah, because Devimon's sort of like just a looming threat that hangs out in the background until they actually go and fight him. Edamon is the one who chases them around.
Yeah, as well as Ogremon.
Ogamon's just a lackey.
Yeah, and he was pretty incompetent.
Ogremon is just the forced sidekick of Leomon, and then the gopher bad guy in the first arc.
Yeah. Ogremon actually gets a bit of time in the spotlight and has a heroic death in the reboot.
Huh.
He also kind of loses his absolute goddamn mind. So that's fun. The reboot is not very light and silly. It is rather grim and dark, actually.
Like Tamer's Grim and Dark, or just like Myotismon Grim and Dark?
Somewhere in the between, I think. So the whole overarching plot is there's this virus that's attacking Tokyo. Now, the first 3 episodes, and I'm going to touch on these first 3 episodes again in a little bit, as basically Matt and Tai teaming up to take out its first incarnation.
So they're using those names again.
Well, no, they're not. They're using the Japanese names, but I'm just using those for the sake of ease.
Yeah, nobody in the West knows who those characters are, except unless you call them Matt and Ty.
Exactly.
Oh, man, that hurt. There's some spice on my tooth that I accidentally swallowed, and it burns like crap.
Fun. So yeah, you have those first 3 episodes. They beat that version of the virus, and everything goes back to normal for about 5 minutes. Then you have the virus reemerges and causes a Tokyo-wide power outage, which leaves them with 72 hours in which to fix the problem before all hell breaks loose, basically. The summer camp, the notorious summer camp from the very start, actually happens, but nobody is sucked away into the void at that point. Instead, all the I think they just call them the chosen ones in this one, not the digidestined, all end up going through to the digital world over the space of maybe a week. So because
like one at a time, not all at once.
Yeah. What is it? Izzy, Tai, and Sora get taken through as a group, and Izzy ends up off on his own anyway. So the first half of that plot is really just teaming up with everyone and figuring out what on earth is going on. The big difference is, like, I'm not going to go too deep into the story from that point on, because after that it's pretty much just by the numbers. It's here's a new episode, here's a new Digimon, here's our hero evolving or doing whatever. So they can run along on that clip for a while. It's kind of weird though, because the characters, when they first start out, feels like they're towards the end of the actual story in terms of their character progression. Like, Tai is already the heroic one, who's kind of the natural leader instead of, being the thick idiot. Matt's stoic, but he's kind of defrosted a bit already.
Yeah, it was on and off with how much they embodied their particular crest, because remember, we have literal call-outs to their character archetype as a plot device in this game, in this series.
Yes, we do. That's not a thing, thankfully. The crests
Not yet.
appear on their Digivice, and that's about it.
But yeah, that was a
But
whole...
they did have character development independent of that. Like,
Yeah, they did.
what was the guy's name in English? Joe.
Yep.
For instance, like he was very much a parents living vicariously through their children's academic achievements type of kid.
Yes.
Like while he was bookish, he mostly abdicated that to his parents rather than, doing anything that he wanted to do. And he had to basically become his own person over the course of the story because he wasn't really able to at home. And
Yeah.
that sort of character development happened independently of just them trying to match the color of their MacGuffin.
Yes.
Yeah, they just but a running theme through the whole one was they already had parts of whatever got them their crest to begin with, for the most part, as part of their character. But until they showed maturation or corrected some flaw related to their crest talent or trait, then they didn't get their ultimate forms. And everybody had to go through something like that before it happened.
Yeah. So there is still elements of that, like a lot of the time when they get a new form, it's some sort of realization or something like that. But it's usually the buy the books, I've got to help my friends type dealy. It's because all that character growth has already been done, and it happened off screen apparently.
Yeah, it's just Ty was always brave in air quotes, but when he was up against Edamon at the end of that arc and realized he needs to step up and try, even though he's probably going to die doing it.
Yeah,
that's different from the bravado of, I'll just walk through the digital barrier that might delete me because I'm brave.
Yeah, like Ty started off not so much.
Trust.
Yeah, Ty wasn't so much brave as reckless at the start.
And Izzy's crest is knowledge, but he had to realize that knowledge wasn't everything and was only usable if you had a heart as well.
Yes.
Before we got Mega Kabuterimon.
I don't know, I feel like Izzy never really stopped being a dweeb.
No, he's still a dweeb.
Yeah, but he was a literal robot by the end of his crest activation arc.
Yeah, like he literally had a lot of his personality sucked out.
He was spelling the alphabet with his body on loop.
Yeah.
Because
he was broken. So yeah, it's still a fun watch. But here comes the but. It is very inconsistent in terms of production values. So you have those first 3 episodes, which are pretty good, actually, in terms of production values. And you get episodes later on, like the episode when they're actually dealing with Nidhoggmon and Eismon and all of that. Top-notch production. But it's particularly jarring when you go from episode 3 to about episode 4, I think it was, where you've got high production value, and then suddenly you've got Snymon. Now, Snymon is interesting because he's kind of a Prime Mantis thingy. But he has almost 0 animation.
Let's see.
So he's running, he's chasing Sora through the forest, and he's 1 step removed from T-posing. And that's his entire animation budget. I think he swings his arms at one point, and that's about it.
I see.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like there's really that much to see.
No, there's really not. And I think Greymon actually gets more animation in there when he turns up, but half of it is like he's down in a canyon, so you can't really see what he's doing anyway. So yeah, that was particularly jarring, to going from really nice animation with Omegamon showing up and, laying down the smackdown, to T-posing praying mantis man.
I see. Also, these Digimon names do not sound familiar in my brain. Maybe they existed in the extended universe or in the games.
Yeah,
but I don't think they're part of the original series.
No, because of the time jump, I guess, or the real world time. You don't have just Generation 1 Digimon running around. You've got Digimon from all over the timeline pop up. And there's also seems to be a whole bunch of new ones just to fill in specific roles.
Well, since we're not following the original story, has Leomon died yet?
Not yet. But, it's Leomon, so give it time.
He'll find a way.
A Leomon must die every Digimon season.
Yes, and the impact must be variable.
Well, they always have an impact, but not all of them are they literally break somebody, like they did in Tamer.
Tamer's broke a lot of people.
Tamer's broke Jerry with that. Poor Jerry.
I'm not just talking about the characters. I'm talking
that was a real bait and switch. Like I felt like the purpose of that was to. I felt like the purpose of that bringing Jerry into the story was to try and create a parallel with Kari, where they bring in sort of a linchpin female figure late whose partner turns out to be someone who's already a member of the cast, engaged in their own business as an independent agent, and then they go on to be super important. Whereas in the case of Jerry, the only purpose that she served was to basically become the chew toy of the universe.
Yeah, she did not have a fun time.
No, she didn't.
Yeah. The only other big bit of note I think I mentioned is TK. And when I mentioned that characters seem to have all their character growth already done and out of the way, TK is the most prominent of these.
How old is TK in this one? Because he was like 10 in the original one. He was way younger than the other kids.
He's still way younger. I don't think it's actually said what his age is this time around, though. He's just younger and shorter.
Do they still have the sort of the background subplot about his parents getting divorced?
No, actually.
That's sad. That was actually, I thought, a really good message in the original one, is how getting divorced can really screw up your kids.
Yeah, and it went over the heads of just about every kid who watched it at that age.
But I think that kids can tell that there's something clearly wrong. Like what would be normal familial relationships have been seriously disrupted because of something that's completely out of their control.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, character growth has already been done, so that plot doesn't need to exist in here, this one. So, TK doesn't actually get into the digital world until much later. He's got to find, or rather, he's the partner of the Holy Digimon, because that's what the MacGuffin they're chasing for the first half anyway.
Well, is it still Patamon?
It's Angemon they're looking for at that point.
Patamon.
Who immediately does a heroic sacrifice and gets himself
turned into Tokomon.
Back down to zero.
An egg or Tokomon?
Egg.
Okay.
So he becomes a literal MacGuffin for a little while.
Well, that happened in the original as well.
Yeah.
It did. But, TK, he spends that first entire arc basically standing on a balcony staring at the sky. Every time it cops over to him, there'll be a feather maybe falling from the sky, and that's about it. So when he gets over in the digital world, he's suddenly, he's clueless for the first little bit, and then he's suddenly confident. And there's pretty much no transition between the two. So, yeah, I think there's a bit of ham-fisted writing going on here somewhere. But beyond all that weirdness, I'm still going to say, if you enjoyed the original Digimon, give it a go.
Does it have anything besides these are characters with the same appearance and name, and also Digimon appear?
The question is this better than just rewatching the original?
Yeah, because that's the other option.
It doesn't have Etamon, so no.
Okay.
All you've said is that all you've said so far just seems to suggest it's a rather ham-fisted remake of the same content with less charm to it.
Yeah, when they're putting actual effort into the production values, it is very nice, very good. It looks great. Well, as great as a Digimon game or anime can look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that side of the ledger, there's nicely animated Digimon movies, like that series of movies that they brought out recently. All of that stuff is on streaming services now. So.
Yes, it is. which I'm actually probably going to watch now that I've caught up with this. I've been meaning
And
to watch that for a while.
Yeah, and continues the story of the old
The-
Digimon adventures, which most people that would watch this, I would assume, have already watched.
Yeah. I just
Yeah,
don't...
do you think this is going to grab any new demographics as a reboot of original Digimon?
I'm going to say no.
I mean, original Digimon was a mid-90s product through and through.
Yeah.
You're not going to appeal to the modern crowds with that, and you're not going to win any non-weebs over to it.
Yeah. And it's, oh boy, the translation. Or the localization, rather.
Well,
That was
yeah.
a thing.
Digimon is one of the series where it's become so well known what the English names are. We have to say Matt, Tai, Izzy, etc. instead of Matto, Taiko, or whatever his name is. Because nobody has a clue what they actually are.
Things
Like
that.
nobody has a clue what their actual names are because everybody remembers the Funimation dub names.
Yeah, Taishi, Yoshido, Izuki. Sora's still Sora, Mimi's still Mimi, and Joe is still Joe.
Joe.
So, yeah, like... It's kind of in the meh column, I think, at this point, really. Like, when it's good, it's great. But when it's bad, it's really bad.
Yeah, because I have to... I enjoy Digimon a lot, but this series, initially, its premise didn't appeal to me at all. Because I'm not a fan of the original series and characters because I just like the character designs and the monsters.
Yeah.
I like the original story because it has stuff that I remember from childhood, and I thought it was pretty good for its time.
Yep.
So if this thing doesn't have an equivalent thing of value to offer me there, I'm probably not going to take my time to go through it.
Yeah, like a lot of the enjoyable stuff for that first one was the character growth. But that's already over and done with by and large.
And Edamon.
And Edamon. I mean, Edamon is so gloriously hammy. It's wonderful.
If you guys are wondering why we're talking about something called Edamon, go look up literally any clip of him on YouTube.
Just anyone. Doesn't matter which.
It doesn't matter which one. The voice, and make sure it's the dub version, and the English voice alone will tell you why everybody loves Edamon.
Yes. There are other bits and pieces they've brought over from more recent developments, like at the point the anime is up to at the moment, you got Wegarurumon. I can never say that one. Wegarurumon and Metal Greymon both have their alternate forms available out of nowhere.
So how far we progress in the story right now? Like, how many episodes are out right now?
I'll have to actually double check the exact number and not get eaten by spiders. Bear with me one moment.
Oh, what's the ballpark? Is it more than 50?
No, I'd say it's mid-20s from memory.
Okay, so yeah, I get that we go faster nowadays with pacing in shows, but yeah, I don't think we're very far into the story if that's the case, assuming it's going anything like the original.
Yeah, at this point in the overarching story, the blackout plot has been solved.
Uh-huh.
And they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop because aside from Matt and Tai, all the other Digidestined have been thrown back into the real world.
Okay, it was just Tai last time that got tossed back, so...
Yeah. Although, it's kind of weird because there's that whole time lag between the real world and the Digiworld. Depending on how far across you go is the greater the time lag.
Okay.
They only seem to acknowledge that when it's convenient to the plot.
Oh, it was like that in the original too. The Digiworld's time distillation shenanigans only applied so much as it was useful to the plot.
Yeah. So it's why they've got 72 hours, but they can walk across 2 continents.
I see.
So, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that, I think.
That all you do for your week is watch Digimons?
By and large, watch Digimons and play around in somebody's backyard.
Uh-huh. All right.
Yeah, well, unless you really want to talk about my D&D shenanigans, but that's... I don't even know what to say about that.
Is it shenanigans or drama that makes you not want to talk about it?
Shenanigans. Largely, my character died last session and got resurrected by an NPC. So as a cost to that, apparently now my character is a host to a... Well, the DMing system calling it a Firefox spirit, but it's a Kitsune, let's face it. Get your weeb hats on. So apparently now my character is a werefox with a few extra bits.
That's incredibly weeby.
It is unbelievably weeby. So now
And
imagine
furry.
Alex Armstrong turning into a werefox.
I'm
That's what we've
imagining
got.
a whole lot of adult female urban fantasy genre writers that are taking ideas from us as we speak. or your DM anyway.
Alex was Armstrong the werefox.
Are
you sure your DM's not a furry?
Maybe.
I'm
questioning that at this point. Though, yeah. Haven't actually had a chance to really play around with the new toys I got with it, so that's cool. I mean, my character got a power boost as a result of it, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, this goes to very common DM philosophy of killing a character is a big deal, and you generally don't want to do it unless it's an absolute emergency.
Yeah, in this case, it was because the dice said no.
Yeah, even when the dice say no, sometimes you got to give them an out, and this seems like this guy is given an out.
Sometimes people roll 3 natural ones, and
I mean, yeah.
That's not the dice saying no. That's the dice saying screw that person in particular. So, yeah, it's also still good fun. So yeah, I'll leave my week at that. Vol, what have you been up to, sir?
Not a lot.
Yeah,
I don't really have much to talk about. My focus was mostly on the election shenanigans this week. So I don't have much to report in particular. Been very busy at work because, you know, we're in a stage of transition where I'm more or less having to be one of the new leaders since all of the old leaders gone. So yeah, it's been a tough time in various ways as a result of that. But yeah, we're also in a beat week for FGO and so forth. So I don't have much to talk about there. Although we are in the I think the 12 or 15 million download campaign now. So they've introduced 5-star embers, which sounds like a good idea until you realize that it doesn't matter because they're almost impossible to get, since they are sort of about as likely as getting a 5-star servant from the regular gacha, except from the friend gacha. So, you know, if you've got a bajillion friend points and a lot of free time to clear out your inventory, you can just, you know, churn through them. Because I've got a couple million of those. I just don't do anything with them.
Yeah, friend points, yes. Time, no.
I suppose the thing that people are really looking forward to with this campaign, though, is that it's free 4-star season. So I picked Valkyrie because I feel like the Velk's got a bit of a raw deal in Lost Belt 2, and they're fairly adorable. So, yep, I picked those, and they are quite useful because my usual go-to is Liz for the AoE Lancer role, and honestly, she's better as a support because her damage is absolute pants. Even though I've got her at Noble Phantasm 3, I think, she still hits like a wet noodle. The Valks, on the other hand, hit quite a bit harder because, well, she can be boosted by Skadi. So that's helpful. Whereas using Merlin to boost Liz is sort of a waste of a Merlin, to be honest. But Liz is still very good as a support because of the sheer magnitude of the attack boost that she gives to female characters. So she still has a use, but I'll probably use Velks a lot more often when just sort of clearing trash quickly, because her Noble Phantasm hits 7 times, so she gets pretty good refund on it. So it's good for farming. Yeah, but I haven't really done much gaming-wise this week at all. It's just been, you know, a quiet week on gaming.
Well,
I've pretty much been watching the the meltdown of every imaginable size of the spectrum for every imaginable reason over the course of the week. So there's been plenty of distractions.
Yeah.
Most of
Yeah.
it not suitable for this show. We have another show for that. Although I don't know
Yes.
if I'll have enough time to actually make an episode on this week. Not that anything seems to look like it's going to actually get decided this week.
I don't know. The way things have been
Well-
going, I think it's going to happen quick.
No,
I don't think anything is going to happen
Well,
quick.
when things start to happen.
Remember,
No.
Al Gore didn't concede until like the 12th of December.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's right.
this stuff takes a long time to go through the courts normally, and even if the courts are in warp speed, it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
because Trump has filed so much in the way of lawsuits because there's so much tomfoolery going on with these elections that it's going to take them forever to chew through the raw number of cases and decide all this crap.
And it has to be done separately for every state concerned as well.
Yeah.
That's just a headache. So yeah, okay, it's going to take a while.
And then the Democrats have to appeal it because they're going to, because of course they are. And then the Supreme Court's going to have to strike the appeal down.
Yeah.
Like this, we know how this is going to work. We know the path that everything is going to take. Most people that are clued into the real world know how everything's going to go, but it's going to take us until mid-December to get there.
Yeah, and by that point, it's still going to be a coin flip as to how it actually all shakes down. Like, will the SCOTUS actually manage to will they rule in a rational way, or will Roberts find a way to screw everything up again? And when they do rule, will anybody pay attention to that ruling? I mean, there's just not a lot that the courts can do beyond issuing mandatory recounts. There's because you can't just throw an election away. There's no precedent for that anywhere in the world ever. For just disposing of or repeating an election. That's never happened on a large scale, never happened in a national election before that I know of anywhere.
And it's a dangerous precedent to set up.
Yeah. Because then that's just going to happen every time, isn't it? So
Yeah.
what they really need to do is nail down protocol for handling the situation where you've got a large number of mail-in ballots. Because once that's been forced through once, and it's already been forced through once, that becomes the new normal. That's just the way these things work. Everything degrades over time, and mail-in ballots are generally a bad idea for security. But now that genie is out of the bottle, you can't jam it back in there. So they'll need to decide on protocol for the future. Like, how are they going to handle the situation? How are they going to put their own set of checks and balances in place to ensure that we don't get this debacle again?
Yeah.
And how much actually turns out to get changed about what the results are being proclaimed to be at present that's also very up in the air, because it will all depend on which particular bases are used to strike down various things that have been done. Like, how are they going to weed out illegal ballots when they have been intentionally mixed in with the legal ones in order to make it harder to do so? Like, is that going to be considered worth the effort, or are they just going to give up on this election cycle and with it have everybody's faith in their electoral system just crumble all at once? So it depends on the SCOTUS doesn't. While the SCOTUS has a humongous amount of power, they also have very little power in this particular circumstance, because any which way they move is going to cause a cascade of other different types of problems.
Yeah, they're kind of screwed no matter which way they move.
Well, there is one way to move. It's just going to make a whole lot of people mad if they do it.
Well, there's going to be a whole lot of people mad no matter what you do at this point.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of which one is going to cause the smallest number of ripples in the long term that are going to be detrimental. Because no matter what they decide, it's going to cause chaos. The question is that chaos that will be resolved over the course of 6 months, or is it chaos that is going to echo for the next 60 years?
Yeah.
Cannot contain myself. They all just need to be charged with sedition and hung.
There we go.
The thing is, how are you going to determine who's guilty?
Fingerprint that stuff. I don't care.
Yeah, well, the people who actually, cast ballots that just happened to get there late, they're not guilty.
I mean, no, but I'm talking about the people that were handling and organizing the stuff. You could tell whose ballot it was supposed to be. Their fingerprints are on it. But who's
So
the person?
what about all the regular postal workers who weren't weren't defying the way things are supposed to be done. Their fingerprints are all on it. How are you going to determine which ones are
I do not know the forensic apparatus to do so. I am guesstimating and would just be spitballing ideas all day. But we need to find a way to do it because that's what needs to happen to these people.
And there's the spicy take of the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's ultimately that's all just down to, the pliable left wing view of the world where goodness, truth, and beauty are all subjective and therefore subject to the whims of the person describing it. That's their fundamental point of view, and in this case, the Democrat Party point of view is that there is no legitimate election that does not elect a Democrat. And if a Republican is elected, that makes the election illegitimate. Therefore, there is no illegitimacy in cheating to seize the election. That's just what happens if you're a relativist. That's a philosophical problem with that school of thought, is that once you decide everything is relative, nothing can be beyond the pale because there is no pale to be beyond. But yeah, there's the broader philosophical point there. But unfortunately, the bickering and warbling and hooting and making lists of political enemies to be purged as soon as you seize power and so on and so forth has pretty much seized control of every form of media over the course of the past week, leaving very little room for anything else of interest. So, I mean, what happened in gaming this week for me to be paying attention to instead? Quarterly reports from Blizz Activision. That's not actually very interesting. In fact, it's usually depressing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we posted everything on our news board hour of, and a good chunk of it is stuff I wouldn't even normally stick in there.
I mean,
dull.
My current fear for the world outside of how things will wind up for the most powerful country on earth is mainly what happens when Bobby realizes how MiHoYo made so much money off of Genshin Impact.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be bad. That's some foreshadowing for a bit later, by the way.
Is it?
Right.
Oh, that's good. That's convenient.
Hooray.
But yeah, so I don't have much else that went on this week. I'm waiting with bated breath for Lost Belt 3 to come out, which should be any day now. We're in beat week, for which I'm very grateful because it means I can relax instead of having to try and keep up with things, which is unfortunately the grievous penalty you pay for playing gacha games, is that you have to keep up with them. Except oddly enough, Genshin Impact, where there's not really much to keep up with it. Like, I'm not focusing on Genshin Impact. I play a little bit of it a couple of times a week, and usually that takes the form of me just walking in a random direction and beating up whatever I find and looting whatever I find, and that's pretty much everything. That's pretty much everything that I do with this game. I haven't progressed the story anywhere. I haven't attempted to farm up anything. I've pretty much stopped developing my characters because it's too onerous to do so. But I'm still having fun sort of wandering around just hitting hillachills over the head for no good reason, other than they're there and they're very hittable. So
and they have treasure.
Yeah. But that game, I gather from the people that are trying to keep up with it, unfortunately doesn't leave you with very much to keep up with, because you just spend all your resin and that's all she wrote. So
you want to spend out cash.
Yeah, and unfortunately a lot of people must be buying into that because they're making money hand over fist. And I know that gachas are normally very cynical, but this is cynical on a level that I feel like we need to invent a new word for it, because cynical is not quite good enough.
Yeah, it's bad. And especially because it has the double motivation with the resin cap every day.
Yeah, and they're lifting the cap, but that's not really enough. And they're allowing you to bank resin, and that's also not really enough. But yeah. While it is certainly an influence on me not to play this game all that much, that it is so cynical, honestly, it's more that I think that I would die if I had to try going back to focusing on 2 gachas instead of just 1. Because cutting all of the other gachas out of my life except FGO has been a humongous relief. But it's a hard wrench, and I get to see all of the new boat waifus showing up in my Twitter feed or whatever, so it's sort of sad. But ultimately, I've got so much more free time, and considering how little free time I have even now, is sort of that should give you a picture of where I was before, in that Gacha had eaten me alive, and I didn't have anything else I could do because Gacha was always there demanding more time. But now it's just FGO that's demanding all my time, and we're in a beat week now, so I haven't had to devote much time to it, although I have devoted a bit of time to it since I've been catching up on some interludes, which I always forget exist until we have a beat week, and then I do a couple of them, and they always turn out to be extremely silly or quite disturbing. Like I did Passion Lips interlude this week, and that was very strange. It was very strange. It was like, sort of like a tiny peephole into the terrifying world that was Fate Extra CCC, the PSP Fate Extra that never got localized, and how incredibly strange and bizarrely sexually charged the whole story was. I mean, that's what happens when to a story when all of the darkest parts of Sakura's personality become the focus. That's basically inevitable at that point.
Yeah.
Crestworms and all that.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was strange. Definitely strange. But yeah, so I've done a few of those, but there's not really anything worth talking about there. They have some of the most bizarrely widely ranging quality of writing of anything in the game. If you were to think about it, that's pretty reasonable, since some of those interludes are written around the same time as Septum, and some of them at differently pitched parts of the game's history. So some of the interludes are actually really good, and some of them just make you want to slap your palm to your face and groan because they just drag on or are completely trite. Like
Septum.
This should have. Yeah, like Septum, I suppose. Like things that should have been a strengthening just so that you didn't have to see anybody talk because it was just embarrassing.
Yeah.
Some of them are fun, silly little stories, though. Others, not so much. Most of them have the traditional enemies, and unfortunately, for some reason, the standard side character for so many things these days seems to be Mephi. Like when you need someone who's like just unconnected to everybody else, Mephi seems to be the one that gets picked.
I see. He even showed up in Salem, didn't he?
I think he might have. Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but because he's always a bit part. But he's a bit part that shows up over and over again, which I think
guess they're like weird and pointlessly creepy clowns.
I think it's more that he just sort of adds a certain amount of flavor, I guess, that's not otherwise present. Well, it's not even that, really. I think it really is just that his lore is not really tethered to anyone else's. So when you just need to throw an element of chaos into the mix for simply to liven things up, Mephi's just always handy because he can be relied upon simply to backstab everybody involved. And where Mephi is concerned, there is no reason to limit yourself to one Mephi,
because there's really just anything goes.
Yeah, like Mephi has in more than one story, more than one Mephi has appeared, just because. Just because.
That's going to get confusing.
Yeah, like, I wonder if they will ever actually examine his story properly in any particular
probably not
storyline, because I think you could probably do something interesting with it if you really wanted to. But I think that they just prefer to have him be a wild card. He's the Joker character, I suppose. But yeah, I don't have anything really to talk about. I meant to try and start not restart and not start from scratch, but to get back into my early aborted playthrough of Trails in the Sky second chapter, but that was before the election decided it was going to take more than one day. So that didn't happen.
It took a week.
And it's still not over, even if the media has declared it so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all remember. There's so many elections where the media was like, "We got it. We know who the president is," and they were just wrong.
I can't remember. 2016, they said, "Yeah, it's over. We know who the president is 3 weeks before the election."
Oh, well, even after the election, we had. I think it was Newsweek magazine had to quickly tell people that they had pre-shipped copies of the next day's thing to remove the Newsweek that week because it had a big old picture of Hillary on it that said "Madam President" in the front.
Exactly.
Those things are worth some dosh now. People like to have one as a collector's item and then get one.
Funny. Also sad.
Yeah, the media in New Zealand has been pretty scurrilous about the whole thing. Since the voting started to be counted, they have been declaring Joe Biden the victor and Trump attempting to steal the election over and over again. Yeah. Like that's been this constant monotonous refrain from all branches of the New Zealand mainstream media.
The ABC here is insane.
Started. I think what I presume is happening is that they just go to the AP and copy whatever the AP says.
Mm-hmm.
That's my suspicion anyway. I don't have any way of substantiating that.
Yeah, it's a good hunch, I think.
I could believe it.
I don't know what it's like in Australia, but the AP is sort of considered to be one of the major authoritative news sources by a lot of New Zealand mainstream media.
Yep.
Though I don't know what they ever did to deserve that. It's always AP and Reuters are the two.
Yeah, here it's Reuters for the most part. But yeah, if we didn't have the Murdoch group, I think it would all be pretty much one note here as well.
Well, it seems like Murdoch himself seems to be changing teams. So
yeah, but nobody actually likes the Murdoch group for Murdoch. Nobody actually likes Murdoch at all.
What's the Murdoch group?
Sky News.
Oh, okay.
They're sort of the Fox equivalent.
Yeah. You want to talk about a news organization that committed suicide over the weekend?
Anyway,
I'm just going to leave my week there. I just didn't have anything interesting happen, which is frustrating for me, but there's nothing I can do about that. And I hope the next week will be better like I do every week. But like I do every week, I don't have much hope to offer on that topic.
Yay, disappointment.
And I suppose the reality is also that I'm going to have to continue watching election coverage because the election never ends.
We will endeavor to get you a proper political show as soon as me and Paul both get some time to do one.
The election is that Lamb Chops song.
Yeah. Yeah, it came in my head too right away. I was trying not to think about it.
Why?
But yeah. So I guess we'll move on to my week then, if you don't have anything else.
Yes, please talk about Trails and not about the election.
Please.
So my timeline this week for free time went better than I thought it would. The first 2 days this week, I actually expected to be pretty busy at work and came in prepared to do a whole lot of work. That didn't happen. The first 2 days this week, there was like one phone call I had to deal with for the first 2 days this week. I basically had the first 2 days off. I might as well have. I took off early around like 12:30 and came home. There was nothing to do. So after I got home, I would sit down and I would blast my way with as much Trails in the Sky as possible, or not Trails in the Sky, Trails of Cold Steel as possible, because I wanted to get it all played and finished before the election. Mm-hmm. So last weekend, plus when I wasn't doing stuff for the political show that weekend, and the first 2 days of this week, I managed to finish out the entirety of Act 3 and the finale of Cold Steel 4. So I finished the game in those 2 days. And I intended, after that, for the rest of the week, if this is a light week because of the election, maybe I can just finish the New Game Plus Platy run and do the and just go read the forums and stuff and post on the Reddit about it or whatever. That didn't happen because the last 3 days this week were a nightmare. I was so busy all the time, every day. And on Thursday, I got left in the office literally alone.
Where was everyone else?
I don't know. Nobody's been able to give me an answer.
They're just gone.
Yeah, they were just gone. Nobody was there.
Did you check the pub?
The local pub here was probably closed after the election.
Probably.
Probably for fear of getting burned down with people in it. But, yeah, I had to deal with election tomfoolery the second half of my week. And I did not get to put much time into Cold Steel when I did get a few minutes before bed because I spent all that time finding people to form some kind of patriotic coalition to watch out for Democrats doing tomfoolery in our area and yelling at people, basically. I've screamed at more people this week, like actual full-throated screams, for being stupid and just giving up right now than I've ever screamed at people in my life. I've been legitimately angry at a ton of people this week. People that should know better. So, yeah, I've been very active in the time I haven't been playing Trails. And that's basically consumed all my free time, other than election tomfoolery and getting mad at people.
Okay. So you talk about Trails?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where I want to start. So, I played a lot of the game all at once. Like, basically no life the second half of and the game okay, so I'll preface everything I'm going to say by even if I focus on some of the stuff that niggled at me because it sticks out, the rest of the game is good enough and the things I don't mention that you should go play it because it's a Trails game. But, because there's always a but, there are a few things that need noting in the game. And the big one is there are too many dang characters in the spotlight to get active time right now. I get that a lot of them are cameos, but it means we're stuck having to keep, I think we're at 30-something characters. No, there's 40 characters in the game, and 12 of them have locked slots, but that's still like 28 characters you have to gear up. And about a quarter of those are merciful in that their weapon doesn't need kept up to snuff.
I think that this is just a product of them over the course of time having let their Trails cinematic universe get the better of them.
Yeah. And the finale had to have everybody show up.
Everybody's here.
Yeah. Everybody is here. That's a very good way of putting it. So we have the entirety of the Trails in the Sky cast. Even Chloe showed up. We have the entirety of the Crossbow cast minus Zeet. Of just people I know from the boxes, and then several that I don't, that are probably mainstays in the story like there were from Sky. We have minor characters from Sky that are here. We have Cassius. He's not a playable character, but he's here. We have, who else from Sky? We have, there's so many. Oh, we have Josette's back. We have Ren's back. And has now been somehow adopted by the Brights, I guess. Because apparently Cassius Bright makes it a thing to adopt Ouroboros enforcers.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. That's some crossbell shit.
It's not like that's ever caused any problems before.
Yeah, no, they got this, yo. So that happened. No idea how. And that's another problem with this one. Even more so than the other games. This one requires you to have played the other games, and unfortunately, a good chunk of the side stories require you to know what the heck happened in Crossbell, but we don't know what happened in Crossbell. Because we didn't play the Crossbell games in the West. So, that's been a slight problem.
That's a gaping big plot hole right there is what that is.
Well, it's not a plot hole because we just don't know.
Void.
That like the Crossbow games exist, they're there. A ton of people played them. If you're in Japan, And the Japanese players all love it the best and think it's the best out of all the Trails series, but we don't know because we haven't played it.
You're just not special enough, Aristeel. You're going to have to come to terms with that.
Yeah, going to have to go learn Japanese if I want to understand what's going on at this rate.
It's looking more and more like that's going to be the only way to go. And I'm not talking specifically about Trails either. It's just the simple, constant censorship of things that just makes me really not want to support the Western localizations of things a lot of the time these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Stop it.
So yeah, I've been going through the game as I was going through the game. Most of the game feels very much so like Trails of Cold Steel 2. In fact, the series mirrors itself between 1, 2, and 3 and 4 almost to a hilarious point, where we have everything from, oh, well, in the first game you're going on field missions with the class and teaching and learning stuff. Well, same thing in 3, except you're doing it as the instructor with the focus instead of one of the students. And then we're going to we're going on an airship to stop a war and prevent it from getting any worse and help the people that are affected by it. And in 4, you're going around and stopping a war and trying to mitigate the damage by helping the people affected by it. Like, it is a 1-to-1 parallel going on right there. So yeah, I that is something that you will notice. And for better or worse, this means you got the entire continent to play with and find stuff in between chapters. So if you are going to 100% this game, I hope you know how to read that map. Now, they do a lot of things to make this easier, to talk a bit in the game's favor, so I'm not just ragging on it here. When you're going around the world, they have introduced a quick travel menu to go to literally any part of the world as long as it's accessible right then. Even the special treasure chests that when you open them, you have to beat a trial to get the reward. You can teleport directly to them if you don't have the party members that they require whenever you finally get access to them. So you can go back to those whenever you want. You can go, and there are a ton more checkpoints than normal for the fast travel system. So you can teleport straight into the middle of areas or at key points of interest to make getting to places just way easier. So there's a whole lot less running around the world faff about time. In fact, there's very little faff about time when it comes to just running around the world itself, which is very nice and something I greatly appreciate. So Turbo Mode's back, and Turbo Mode's bugs have been fixed pretty well, actually. Turbo Mode has not caused any of the usual problems that it does in the previous few games, where sometimes characters can frame clip because they're going so fast straight out of bounds. I haven't noticed that happen once with Turbo Mode turned on, and I had Turbo Mode on almost the entire game because time. So no tomfoolery with that. They seem to have got that under control.
That's good.
Ornament setups are still... I was going to say last week, and I'm glad I kept my mouth shut about this, that I was going to say it seems like they've done a much better job balancing everything in the game, because they nerfed Brave Orders, which were a huge issue. They nerfed Delay and Impede again for like the 5th time.
It's never going to be enough.
It's not enough. It's not enough. In fact, Impede was so broken, they're having to build a new combat system without it. So there is no way to make Impede not feasible. As long as some numbers can hit 100%, it's just going to be the most busted stat in the game. And there's no... I'm sorry, Falcom. There's no way around that. I can make the enemy lose a turn or more if I can just get this Impede number to 100%.
I just don't understand why they don't just make it so vanishingly rare that you can, I might be able to get one character to have a little bit of Impede at the very end of the game. It's that powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know why they just can't make it ultra, ultra, ultra rare.
Yeah.
They don't have to be a normal stat.
Yeah, it requires... They moved it deeper into the tree on the Master Quartz, because that's how you get most of your actual spells now with the new Orbment gearing system. So it's way deeper in the tree, and you can only have one of these equipped, and it's only in some of the master quartz, and they can't be cross-equipped. So you have to deal with what you got. And they have made it so that you only get one impede, which means their turn order doesn't go down by one if they get inflicted by that impede, but it's as though their attack costs one extra. You would inflict 1 point of delay on them, which moves them one notch down on the bar, but it doesn't move a whole character slot, so that may not change the turn order at all. It'll be as though the last attack they did had costed one more delay. And usually a basic normal attack costs 12 delay. That's all fine and dandy, but all you got to do is get a fast character, and the protagonist, Reen, is a very fast character. He's a attack speed type character, so you can do it with him, and there are characters that it's even better with, and stack delay impede on them. And just get it as high as you can. I mean, impede 1, 2, 3, plus the mega version. 7-fold gem. And then you just stack speed on them as high as you can, and you can literally auto-attack your way through most bosses. So, after I realized Impede was becoming a problem again, because it is better early, because Impede has also had its costs jacked up in how much spleef it takes to craft one Impede quartz at any rarity.
Spleef.
So I waited until about mid-game to start poking at it, and I immediately imposed a rule on myself for my first playthrough. I will not use any Impede gems. Because it just breaks the combat system. And it's impossible for the average player that's experimenting even a little bit not to see it.
I usually don't experiment very much. Like, I usually remember about Impede somewhere about 1/3 of the way into the last dungeon when things are starting to get hairy. Because if you don't play with Impede at all, the game can actually be really quite challenging.
Yeah, it can be balls of the walls hard. But yeah, the other scaling problem is, while they nerfed all the Brave Orders, they're still too powerful. Brave Orders are, as you attack things in this game, you will occasionally, if you either get a critical strike or hit them with a weapon type they're weak to, trigger a link attack where another character can come to a follow-up attack after you, and this will give you 1 BP. And if you as you build up PP, or BP, with a B as in balloon, you can hold up to 7 of these BP and expend them on Brave Orders that cost a varying amount from 1 to 5. And they have different effects. And these do not cost a character's turn to use. And these things can do things like, what's the most ridiculous one in my party right now? For 1 BP, for the next 4 turns, that's turns you, the player, are controlling a character. So for the next 4 moves your characters get, they have defense, arts defense, speed up medium for 2 turns, so that's just 2 turns until their personal turn comes around. And all 4 of those turns until the 4th turn is elapsed, you have 50% damage reduction.
That's pretty bonkers.
That's 1 BP.
Woof.
If at 5 BP, restore 50% health, 4 turns of 50% evade, plus 50 CP to all party members. Or, like, where's Emma? She has a 2 BP busted one. Okay. 8 turns, magic attack absorption. So any arts attacks from the enemies, you don't just nope them, you eat them and take them as EP for yourself and CP for your attack characters. And it comes with a 4-turn long attack, arts attack up large, just for kicks, on every character. So these things are just busted and never should have been introduced to begin with. They just completely break the game. But they're also not using these Brave Orders is not feasible to beat the game with, especially on Hard and Nightmare. Like, there will be some fights you just can't beat without Brave Orders available, because you need to be able to nullify attacks. But I don't like playing with that, oh, well, I have to use it for this fight rule. I can ban something from my playthrough because it's too powerful, but being wishy-washy doesn't feel right if the fight just requires it, because it's also hard to tell, and I would inevitably just start beating my head against something if to stick to the fact that I did, then so I could say I didn't use BP at all to myself. But yeah, these things should never have been introduced into the game. I don't know why they were. It was a dumb idea. They're way too powerful for their cost and what they do, but they're here, and I'm not sure there's anything that can be done about that. but they are a huge problem with balancing. And that's an issue we've run into with the ATB system in general. It's too many. There are too many avenues to exploit this system and just break the game. And they don't. You may not get it on your first playthrough of Sky or even the Sky series in general until the third, because number one, there ain't that many options in the Sky games. That it's a very basic version of this system. And number two, you haven't really figured out what you're doing if you're playing Sky. And Sky is naturally harder than these games on top of that. Like, the Sky series is way harder than the Cold Steel games.
No, I thought that I was just really bad. Because you're always talking about how you play Cold Steel, you've got like about 15 different game-breaking strategies and all of them make the game trivial. And I'm like, Sky kicked my ass in the tutorial.
Yeah, no. It doesn't get really bad until Cold Steel 3. That stuff just gets way too easy. But for some reason, they like shifted down the difficulties so that hard is now normal and Nightmare is now hard. But even then, Nightmare is still doesn't matter. All it means is the fights will take forever because they jack the health of everything through the roof. And more importantly, they jack the speed stat of everything proportionally by a percentage. So, because speed is so hard to come by, what you wind up with is a whole bunch of enemies that previously were trivial because they had 190 speed and you have everybody at 200 so you can go before they can, all of a sudden have 40% more speed and can outrun your whole team. And there is no way to stop that, and they're going to get 8 turns to your 1. So Nightmare can be a bit of a thing sometimes. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going through Nightmare, and usually around the point I'm at in the turbo mode constantly on, skip the cutscenes, run through the game, just to get the cleared on Nightmare and get all the bonding events trophy. It generally doesn't go that bad, and is by the second half I'm able to actually play the game with it still presenting some kind of playability. That is not the case in this game. The system is just too busted. It's too easy to break, and it's long since got broken. So I'm still just ripping my way through stuff. But onto the stuff people actually care about with Trails. The story the overarching story, I think, does a pretty good job of backfilling a lot of what people had when it came to Erebonia. And that seems to be the whole point of this game, is to justify a whole lot of Erebonia's garbage they've done on the political and world scene in Zemuria, because they just have been really stupid. They've attacked their enemies for no reason at all, other than to be imperialistic and expansive. But their emperor has been presented as a genuinely nice guy that just wants what's best for his country and isn't trying to cause any major problems. So what gives? Well, we know Osborne's there as the chancellor, but there's a bit more to it than just the evil chancellor is the evil man. And everything around Osborne is spoilery, but they even managed to give him a justifiable reason for why he does what he does. That said, it involves a whole lot of Septetrians did it, and comes off a little ass-pully. Not super ass-pully, but it's getting real tired in this series whenever something that obviously dumb happens. Their answer is a Septetrian did it. So, yeah, that's a thing. All the characters in general get enough time if they're part of the Class 7 casts, plural, new class and old class. All the other characters don't get anywhere near enough time, and we need to seriously think about cutting some of these characters from the roster in future games. Because we just ain't got enough time to cover all of them if you want to, A, make the video game on time, and B, have the players have time to go through it. Because we're reaching critical mass on characters. And a lot of the stories get not given enough time because everybody's got to have something, or they just get a token amount and leave you with more questions than answers.
Have you actually got a count on how many characters are available yet?
I don't have an exact one off the top of my head. If I wasn't in the middle of a battle right now, I could look and tell you. But it's a lot. When you have 3 whole series worth of the characters they've introduced, it just starts to... And most of them from every series are making an appearance in one game. it just really starts to bloat the character roster quite a bit.
Yeah, it does.
So we're just we're looking at an absurd number of characters, but thankfully it looks like they're cutting everybody off for a bit, and then the Cowbird series that's upcoming will be a good opportunity for them to take a step back and just kind of reset a little bit, and bring everything back down to normal, and then we can go back to people from this series appearing slowly over time again to be reintroduced, because the first 3 story arcs just got out of hand with how many characters there were. So yeah, I'm looking forward to where they're going to take the Calvert series. I think there's a lot they can do with it. So hoping they do it good. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the Cold Steel series so far, but I think it is much weaker than the Sky trilogy. Apparently, a lot of this gets further explored, and a lot of our questions get answered in the equivalent of this series, Trails in the Sky the Third, which is Hajimari no Kiseki, or Trails of Origins. So that's coming out next, and will be the last game in the West that uses the ATB battle system.
Okay.
So looking forward to that. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting time to go through it. I don't know any specific things I can say in favor of the game that I haven't said about the other Sky games, or not Sky games, the Trails games. There's just a really fun long-form RPG if you want a good old JRPG with a unique combat system and a really deep and intricate world to explore that's going to constantly get added to and get stuff revealed about it. Because that's the other thing about Trails, is it's a consistently released series of games. They do come out. They don't have these eons long breaks unless you're in the West.
Cough, cough, Final Fantasy.
Yeah. So they don't go on that. They're consistent about it.
They don't get lost in production long enough to get transformed into Boy Band Road Trip.
Yeah.
Yes.
They generally come out on time. The stories for themselves are really good. Back when they were first being released, they were hailed as hidden gems in the West, and they do really, really good in Japan. They've got a huge following in Japan relative to most other smaller RPGs. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see where they take the series from here. They answer a lot of questions about the world and bring up quite a few more that makes it look like we're going even deeper into the metaphysics of the universe, which is something they eventually had to do because Adios is looking to be more and more like she's part of the plot instead of just a thing that exists. So yeah, we get the very end of the game. After you beat the game, if you reload your clear save, there's a bonus cutscene, and we get to see the Grandmaster of Ouroboros, except for her eyes.
Because of course you can't.
You don't get to see her upper face. So I cannot.
So you don't really get to see her, you just get to see that she is a thing.
Yeah, she is a thing that looks vaguely girl-shaped. Well, woman-shaped. She very much would be approved of by Team Gawain, from what I thought. But yeah, so she gets revealed as existing. We see her have a full body, minus top of face reveal. We learn a little bit more about Ouroboros through what they don't tell us in this game. And the fun thing about the Ouroboros plot that runs through all the series is Ouroboros never explicitly says what their goals is, and they very deliberately don't tell people certain things. And Yuna, the girl from Crossbell in Reen's class that's with him in this game, just straight out calls him out on it. Like she sees Campanella and the replacement for Weissman's old position as an Anguis. Just gets up in their face and is like, okay, you guys have been really sketchy and cagey and evasive in every single answer you've given us whenever we've asked you anything. If we beat you this fight, you're going to give us something we can use. And being Ouroboros, they don't explicitly tell her anything, but they mention things like this world and put heavy emphasis on it. And it's revealed that you can't sail past the edge of a certain point in the ocean. You'll just be teleported and be facing around the other direction.
So what you're saying is, in the next series, you're going to space.
It's looking like real space. I don't know if it'll be in Calvard, but in the Calvard series, but it's looking like that. We learn a whole space. Yeah, we learned a whole lot about the way the world existed during the Great Collapse, which was an ongoing mystery in the universe that's been existed since the start of the series. What happened during the Great Collapse? How was orbital technology involved? What is orbital technology? We finally get to go to the Black Workshop, something that's been a running thing since second chapter, I think. And we just never have gone there. It's just been this elusive place where old technology from the golden age that existed before the collapse is either still kept preserved or researched there. You finally get to go there and see what they've been up to, because they've apparently been active and operating throughout the entire Erebonia arc, doing stuff. So yeah, just a lot of cool stuff finally gets revealed, and that's this whole game's real point. Less to conclude a story arc between Reen and his students and his fellow students who were in school when he was in school, and more to answer a whole lot of those world questions and get them set up to have a proper in-story answer, so that we can focus on the stuff they actually want to focus on now. So yeah, it was worth playing for that, and the books in it are worth reading for the same reason, that they finally answer a lot of these long-running questions, but open up just as many more. So we're looking at a shift in perspective here with the Trail series going forward because of a bunch of the reveals in 4. But I still don't know how I want to call the story itself in terms of what I mentioned before, Reen and his classmates and his students and their progression as characters. Because honestly, I don't like a whole lot of them. I don't think any of them are very well written and are certainly nowhere near the tier of like the people in Class 7. But or not Class 7, the people from Sky.
Well, Sky seems like it's structured in a very different way. Like it was, Sky is more traditional in some ways, whereas I feel like the Cold Steel series is sort of like, this is a story which was written in the era where light novels are a thing with a gajillion characters and so on. Whereas Sky is a very, very, particularly first chapter, it's a very sort of intimate coming of age story with two people who you just follow all over the world on their first big adventure.
Yeah. And then you have the Sky games are very linear in the way they present things. Cold Steel is very formulaic, but linear is not a word I would describe it, because they follow a formula where you go to a hub, you do the stuff at the hub, you get a bunch of quests, you go do the quest, you go back to the hub, you progress the story, you go back to the hub, you do stuff in the hub, you get a bunch of quests, you do the quests, you progress the story, repeat. Sky series doesn't do that. There are hubs, as in there are towns, but you don't follow that formula. You're just always going to the next area and picking up quests along the way and doing them as you go. And you may return to town whenever you find a quest that from the Bracer Guild or something that needs you to go back to town. But in general, you just keep marching forward and following the story and picking whatever characters come up and along, instead of having a consistent core that steadily grows. The Sky series is not shy about interchanging characters in your party the entire way through as you're moving through the game. It is very much so a linear adventure.
But even so, it's not. It's also not really a grand scale epic narrative. It's because ultimately, at its core, it is about Estelle and Joshua.
Yeah,
like there are big things happening, but it's about those people. It's not really about the world.
Yeah, the Cold Steel games are very much so about the world itself, and Reen is more like the fulcrum a few of those events in that world sit on, and how he tips and what he does is important. The fact that he is Reen does not matter all that much, other than the fact, for some reason, his students and his classmates need him for emotional support, or they can't continue through life.
They miss it when they can't obtain the unsolicited head pats.
Fee lampshades the unsolicited head pats in her first bonding event pretty heavily. And in fact, the girls all in the hot spring one time have a nice long discussion about how lewd Instructor Reen's head pats feel. So, yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, I do recommend the Cold Steel trilogy. If nothing else, because it comes after Sky, is related to the stuff in Sky, and it does have a decent story attached to it. Even the lesser of the Cold Steel trilogy is still good. The story there is still interesting and worth following. I do not think it's as big of a home run as Sky first and second chapter were. Not even close. But it's still totally worth playing. And I'm thoroughly invested in this universe now, so I'm going to be very excited whenever future games come out and keep playing it.
Neat. All right, and with that, we should probably take a break.
Yep, we're at an hour and a half. So here's some music, folks. We'll be right back. And we're back.
Yes, indeedy.
For those of you wondering in the live show chat, I waifued the same game that I do every game in this one. I went with CEO Chan. Good old Lisa. Only one to run a legitimate business of the people that graduated in the graduating class.
How
And
about
the
illegitimate?
estranged twin sister of the eldest of the three Valkyries in FGO.
Yeah, most blonde-haired girls will give that vibe, though, to you that use a bow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started to open and check for emails, and then I closed the window.
No emails today.
Okay. All right. We have some newslets.
Yeah, a
It
lot
was
of
not really a newsy week.
Yeah, a lot didn't not happen. I will throw one quick note up as a follow up for last week, though. Haven't actually got an article to talk about it, though. That Gamer Gort's movie got axed.
Really?
I know, what a surprise.
You mean it didn't test well in their focus groups because nobody gives a crap about it?
Exactly.
That's really hilarious. It's double hilarious because their focus groups are probably a whole bunch of Democrats and people that would normally be, oh, Gamergate is evil, so they just didn't care.
Well, the point, it's a movie that openly and blatantly crapped on its target audience.
Yeah.
Just don't do that.
But Fern, it worked so well for Big Bang Theory.
No, it didn't. Like, Big Bang Theory target audience was not nerds. Doesn't matter how much they claim it was. It wasn't.
Well, the thing is that the target audience, sort of like the post anti-entryism, post anti-gatekeeping, like post gatekeeping era nerds. So not actual nerds, but people who have decided that they are nerds now because it's cool.
I guess.
Yeah, the nerd lights that are aware of occasional things that nerds do or hobbies they play sometimes.
They remember hearing the phrase "the cake is a lie" once.
The meme is a dead.
And they still think that that's a live meme.
No, that meme has been dead for years.
That meme was dead on arrival as far as I'm concerned.
Not quite, but close enough. It got hammered that much.
Such a different time in internet culture.
I know, right?
Portal 1 came out. I don't make me continue down that line of thought because I'm pretty sure I was in high school when Portal came out.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that too much. So, all right. Moving on then, what did happen this week?
All right, I guess I can grab one. So we'll start with this one since we foreshadowed it earlier.
All right.
Genshin Impact will be raising the prices of gyms in some countries.
But why though?
So if you live,
I presume it would just be some kind of business issue, rather than because they actually think that they can bleed people from Windosh.
Business issue? You mean greed?
Well, I mean, there are payment processing fees and stuff in some countries. I only skimmed this headline earlier in the week. I didn't read the article, so I don't.
This appears to be on Apple's end and why this happened. Their cut of things taken and their way of taking money from the people that use the Apple Store to host their app has become much more angry after Epic's tomfoolery.
You think?
So they're charging people more to have transactions go through the App Store, and this has led to the gym prices in Genshin hiking as high as 70 to 80% in Brazil with no advance warning.
Everything is so expensive in Brazil.
Yeah, so I think a little bit of this might be price inflation correcting if we correct for the U.S. market prices, which are still way too much.
Because normally things in Brazil, particularly as far as gaming is concerned, are heinously expensive, but it's usually because of import taxes, and you don't really have that excuse for Prima gyms.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not the only thing on Apple that has seen price hikes in these regions either. It just it's a thing. So if there was even more reason to think they're going to be cynical and try just cash grab as hard as they can, this is a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, it's kind of what they do these days.
And they are a Chinese company, so they do have to show growth and overturn year after year. Otherwise, Big Papa Winnie the Pooh will come in and fix the company for them.
Fix.
This isn't the investors will not be happy and our stocks will go down for a few years situation like it is in a free country. These are, Big Papa Pooh Bear's going to come get us. We need to make sure we're churning out money. Pooh Bear coming.
Pooh Bear coming. So yeah, I've put Genshin Impact down completely, I think, at this point.
Yeah. So
partly because of the lack of content, and partly because it's just so mercenary, I guess is probably a good word for it.
It feels icky when you get in.
Yeah. The game does just feel icky once you realize what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I've not touched any of that. Like I described earlier, I'm playing it in a thoroughly unserious fashion, where I just muck around. I'm not even really trying to accomplish anything. I'm just sort of wandering around looking at pretty things.
Just faffing about.
It's a do something with your hands kind of game, for me anyway. And it will be firmly in the bucket forever, I think, until maybe after they release several story patches and I feel like catching up for a week.
I mean, it has some cute waifus, but the effort to get them, a little bit too much.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try with any particular girl's banner in that game. Not worth.
Yeah, not worth the hassle. So yeah, it's Genshin Impact has had its flash in the pan, and now it's over.
For you, anyway. Unfortunately, their profits just spiral ever higher.
Yeah, because they've got people hooked.
Yep, it's that gambling engine thing. Like, gacha is cynical at the best of times, but Genshin Impact is a particularly malevolent breed.
Yes. There's that whole cost fallacy as well.
And like I keep saying, it's such a great game. Like, the nucleus around which everything has gathered is a really fun little game to play.
Yeah, and that just makes it all the more sad.
Yeah, it's just it's attached to this model, and there's not like, what motivation does MiHoYo have to aspire to something greater? They made like $250 million in the first month,
and
the game cost $100 million to make. Like, what motivation could they possibly have to make this anything more than just a gacha engine? Because it's done real well. It's done real well as just being a vehicle for gacha. And I mean, the game is great, but I mean, how much of their gacha takings are simply because, they lifted their game just enough. They lifted their game just enough to hook a lot of people who wouldn't normally get hooked on a gacha, and then sucker them in as a sort of a new audience. I've seen the argument circling around that there are loot boxes in plenty of games. This isn't something that's especially unique to Genshin Impact or Japanese or East Asian gacha games specifically, but generally speaking, those loot box implementations in Western games are very, very, very much less integrated into the natural flow of play.
Yes.
Like, you don't do gacha in League of Legends for your characters.
Well, actually, you do
I
now.
dread to think what would happen if that had been the standard implementation.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it is all loot boxes now as well there.
Yeah, but you still earn points towards a character, right?
Maybe? It's been that long since I've actually given even the slightest toss about League of Legends.
It's not a scenario where, you've got to pull the gacha and maybe you'll get the character you want if he's on rate up this week.
Yeah, I think you can. You probably should be able to still work your way up to it.
And in order to play at a competitive level,
You gotta.
You just happen to need particular champions. Like what an evil structure that would be. The only reason they can get away with it in this one is that it's single player, so that's never going to be an issue. But
yeah, you say it's a blatantly evil structure, but on the other hand, Tencent.
Yep, Tencent does own them now, and that's just the way things are going to go. Because China
needs money for Pooh Bear's upcoming war with the world.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not get too bogged down on China again.
Oh, if we really want to go ham on China.
Oh, I know.
He just said that we don't.
We don't.
I know. I was teasing Fern.
So, what else we got? Yeah, definitely. I'm going to miss a lot of Genshin Impact, but the gacha and the cynicism of it, I'm really not.
Yeah, I wonder if like they've pioneered a lot of other things. I wonder if there's a chance that they will pioneer scaling back on a gacha, the first time in human history.
Maybe
too much to hope for, but it would be nice. Because even if it was at the level of FGO, I could tolerate that.
FGO's pretty
because I have tolerated FGO. I've poured a huge amount of money into FGO, not whale amounts, but definitely dolphin plus amounts. But again, a lot of the reason that I do that is because of my love of the franchise, and it's just a good way to pour money into the franchise. And like from a certain point of view, and this is just my deranged self-justification. It's not actually rational thinking, but from my point of view, I wouldn't get things like the FGO Babylonia anime that I enjoyed very much if there were not people like me dumping money into the gacha.
Yeah. That's come back to you really enjoying a franchise, so you want to support it. I think that's a good reason you can justify spending money on something like that.
Yeah, I justify it as being similar to buying figures.
Yeah.
Which I also do. I've got Lancer Kirihime on my shelf, and I've got Liz on my shelf.
And they're watching.
Well, Kirihime is definitely always watching. I think Liz is just singing.
I'm not sure which is worse.
She comes with a little mic stand.
Oh boy. Alright, we should move along then, shall we?
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Alright, we got a few more things. So, PlayStation 5, we got a snapshot of its on-deck hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
It is a whopping 660-something megabytes. Or gigabytes. That's nothing.
That's not much.
While it does not work on launch, they still have that M2 bay.
Mm-hmm.
Which currently doesn't work, by the way.
Yeah, I just said it won't work on launch, probably because it was something that they tacked onto the main board as an afterthought, rather than something that was always planned to be there.
Yeah.
But it's just like, oh, well, we've got the space, so we might as well jam something on here. Like, if you've ever met somebody who designs circuit boards, they're all about economizing space. But they probably found that they had some extra space. Oh, well, let's jam an M2 slot in there. While that doesn't work right now, it's because it's on there. There's probably plans in the works to make it work, and that will probably be much like with the way hard drives were on the PS4 and the PS3, probably just going to be compatible with any and all aftermarket hard M2 drives. And although it's not going to necessarily be up to the tier of the sort of blazing fast speeds that the proprietary SSD is capable of, that they've been bragging about so much, M2 is still a very, very fast SSD format.
Oh, yes.
And I'd say that part of the reason that they haven't switched it on yet is because they want to blend that in as seamlessly to the rest of their hardware ecosystem as possible. so that they don't do a Microsoft, basically. They don't do an Xbox, because I mean, what's the Xbox scenario? They're selling like a $300 auxiliary drive or something bullshit like that.
Yeah, that got a bit
In
stupid,
order,
really.
and they're like, oh yeah, and you can use USB drives. You just can't install any of that generation's games on it.
Yeah.
I think that's where Sony are trying not to be. They don't want to be in that place.
Yeah, I think everyone
And
found
so,
that
yeah.
sleazy at the time, so...
And I think that's probably a non-trivial amount of the reason that M2 drive doesn't currently work.
See,
Alright, so yeah, it's still on track to be an alright system.
I don't really want to be an apologist for a tiny onboard SSD, especially when the SSD is the part that they've been shilling relentlessly. But to a certain degree, the fact that it's the same for both competing consoles suggests to me that there's not at present a practical way to do otherwise.
Yeah, the SSDs are just too expensive to make big, is what it's looking like right now.
Yeah, it's like people will talk about how the cost per gigabyte of SSDs has dropped dramatically. Yeah, but these are not normal formats. These are proprietary formats that have been designed to perform superior to anything else on the market. So you're going to be in a situation where you just have to deal with what you can get at that particular point in time.
But it is worrying that it's that small. I mean, that is approaching levels that's close to... It's not unacceptable, but it's not good when we have games that are 133 plus gigs.
Well, there are worse situations, but like I saw one recently that was 200 odd, but I think that there's a lot of faith in the new version of, say, Unreal Engine, for instance, that a lot of this is going to be able to be abstracted out algorithmically. So a lot of textures in that will be generated using the horsepower of the graphics renderer rather than stored straight up as textures. And there's a lot of... I've seen a lot of tech demo stuff that suggests that that's the way the newest versions of UE are going. That's all about technology that will allow things to be propagated in a sort of algorithmic fashion rather than having to have an artist go in and design every little bit and then make a giant file which has all of it in there. Like the goal is to both save development time for the artists, who can then, procedurally generate some of the assets that they need that are just going to be repetitious or repetitive, and also to be able to save those in an algorithmic way so that they will be regenerated on the spot rather than having to be, pre-rendered in advance and then just plonked into the game world. So that will reduce the amount of storage space consumed, and also, to a certain extent, the amount of data that has to be shunted between storage and RAM. But it's largely theoretical at this point. That's how it's supposed to work. We'll have to wait and see whether developers actually utilize it. But the bait that was being used to get them to utilize it is that reduction in the time that things will spend in the development pipeline by having this ability to just, propagate things in an automatic fashion rather than having to draw everything by hand, so to speak.
Yeah. So, yeah. Like, I'll probably get a PS5 at some point. It's definitely something I'd like to have, but they've still got a ways to go, I think, before I even consider a day one purchase.
Yeah, I'm definitely not in the early adopter category for this. Like, all they need to do to get me there is announce a Fate game, to be fair. But barring that, I'm not in the early adopter category. I'm not likely to become part of the early adopting category. However, I have heard very, very good things about particularly their backwards compatibility. I don't know the specifics, and people, when they've got a new device, they tend to be, you know how people tend to justify their recent expenditures to themselves and to anybody who is willing to listen,
Poorly,
because that
yes.
because that feels less like trying to justify it to yourself. But yeah, I've heard very positive things about the way their backwards compatibility has played out, and they were talking a lot about the dramatically reduced loading times and things that they would be able to accomplish with it, and texture smoothing and that sort of thing, just a higher quality experience from current gen games. And that sounds really hopeful. Like, if I might be able to be convinced to buy one if somebody is able to tell me, oh yeah, you can play Monster Hunter and you load into the zone the moment that you're okay going there. Like, that's that would be if I'm going to eventually buy one, then that suddenly becomes a strong proposition for a buy earlier if it's going to significantly improve my current gen experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen anything that supports that strongly enough to actually pull the trigger on something like that.
Yeah. Oh, which reminds me, actually, they've started seeing gameplay footage from the new Monster Hunter game. They put out a gameplay video for the Great Sword, and it's kind of funny watching someone kind of bungee cord their way around a monster with a giant stonking piece of iron on a stick.
I just don't like it. Like, that sort of hyperkinetic gameplay is just, it's not Great Sword.
No, it's...
I already didn't like the extreme increase in emphasis of hypermobility that the Clutch Claw brought. Like,
Yep.
oh, it's an interesting toy, but it changes the way the game operates. And I don't think it's necessarily for the better, because I liked the pace of the Great Sword the way it was. I liked that sort of, you're faced off with your opponent and you circle each other, and then you wait for the other guy to drop their guard so that you can go in. That's the way that gameplay operates. It's sort of almost ironically for the weapon, it's sort of a gunslinger quick draw type of situation where you're waiting to be the first guy to twitch in the opening.
Yep.
But that when everybody is just slinging around wildly, that gameplay no longer exists, because you're expected to play like you're using a hypermobile weapon like the Insect Glaive or something, even if that's not what you want to do. I feel like it's actually taking options away from the player more than it's adding them. If it was a true option, that is to say, you weren't actually expected to have access to it, that would be different. But the game like in Iceborne was built around having the Clutch Claw. You are really, really gimping yourself if you don't use it in a lot of situations. And it's not completely endemic though in Iceborne. You can get by without it. If they go like full Bungie, I feel like that's actually going to result in homogenizing the combat to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And that's just my gut feeling on it. Because I feel like the heavy weapons were designed to be played in a different way.
Yeah. Like, it's a lot faster, but it wasn't like springy, bounce like the Insect Glaive would be, but it's still like using it to get a airborne attack going, things like that. But
yeah.
It's actually kind of funny in the gameplay preview video. He's trying to show off a move, and basically it just gets bitch slapped out of the sky. So there's that. And yeah, even though I'm not super keen on the slinger mechanic in the new game, I'm still kind of eager for the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're always going to be eager for new Monster Hunter. But,
the truth.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to just wait for the next sort of one in the line of Monster Hunter World, I think, where you've got that sort of... Well, that depends. I don't know if they're going to decide that the Switch is a platform worthy of being included in the main line or not, because I don't think it is. I think the Switch is a cheap phone, which just happens to have a lot of accessories. That's the way I've heard it described, and it's the way I agree with, because it's a gutless device that gets by on ingenuity, and for the experience of Monster Hunter, I want everything turned up to maximum.
Yep.
I don't like, oh well, a Monster Hunter's all about the gameplay, so we don't need to have the poshest graphics ever. No, I want that monster to be terrifying.
We had the crap graphics for the longest time, and we will have crap graphics again for Rise because it doesn't look fantastic, admittedly.
There's one thing you don't want turned up to maximum: the load times.
Yay!
Well, I mean, they might figure that one out, since the current new console generation is all about minimizing load times.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
now we've had Monster Hunter in super duper graphics. We want that again.
Yeah, you didn't have anything to compare it with before.
Yeah.
but now you know what it can be.
And how awesome that was. Alrighty. What's next?
I accidentally realized I had my mic muted for most of that while we were talking about Monster Hunter.
Yay.
Next. Y'all got anything particular you want to talk about?
Just one I can quickly drop into the oh god, why bucket. There's a new Mass Effect game being made.
Oh, yeah. So I haven't looked at anything about it. I don't
have any intention of looking at anything about it. What an appalling thing to inflict on the world.
After Andromeda...
We've just had... I was going to say after a pandemic. It's like, this is how you're going to try and cheer us up? Like, the half the world is terrified of this thing and in mourning over it for some reason. And your reaction is to inflict another plague on the world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been a couple of years now since we last had a fashion store mannequin invasion.
I think that's generous.
I know.
To refer to them that way. In fact, I think that most fashion store mannequins are significantly more appealing to look at.
Because they don't move. So, yeah. Hopefully they've learned their lessons and we don't get a repeat of the various things from the Uncanny Valley. I doubt it, though. I very much doubt it.
So, in addition to the new Mass Effect game, we have a announcement of a Mass Effect 1 Legendary Edition.
So now that people might get excited for.
I don't know why it needs it. It still feels like a modern-ish game when I think of Mass Effect. I think of a current gen game. But I think it's just because time has completely broken for me over the course of the last year that I might think of it like that.
It's when did Mass Effect the first one come out?
I don't want the answer to that question.
Yeah, that game's kind of old.
Oh wow, yeah, 2007.
Nope.
So yeah, the game itself though is excellent. The gameplay can be a bit dodgy sometimes, and the whole vehicle mechanics were.
I don't think it was excellent. I think it was excellent when it came out because there was a lot of room to explore a universe that has now been completely destroyed by the ending of Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda.
Yeah, ignoring Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda, though, the story for the first Mass Effect was great on its own.
You can't ignore them because all the suspense and build-up has an ending. We know where it goes, and it's terrible.
It does.
So all this stuff in that story that gets built up, if this was a good series with a complete good ending and that wasn't complete, dog crap, and then Andromeda afterwards, would still be worth playing and getting excited about to follow through and maybe take another look at something like that you liked and re-experience the build-up if you forgot some things. But that is not the scenario we live in. We live in a universe where the Mass Effect series existed and was terrible, and that is hard canon. So if you go through replaying this game and rediscovering all this stuff and rereading junk that sounds like it can build up into something real good, there's always the truth in your head that whatever cool thing you think it could have turned into is not going to happen. And that is in fact wrong.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, as much as we might want to go back and play Mass Effect 1 on its own,
they killed
it is
it for
tainted.
everyone. Yeah, it's permanently tainted. tainted world, because it was pregnant with possibility once upon a time, and
Yeah.
now that we know where that all ends up, and for such bad reasoning, like it's
Yeah.
just sad, because I mean it was this sort of very very fresh, a very fresh sci-fi world. It was sort of like, well, in television they had things like Star Trek and that, and in movies Star Wars and that. They had big sci-fi franchises which stretched over multiple different media and many years, even decades and decades of time. And there was a certain amount of hope that Mass Effect could be that. And
Yep.
they killed it. They just killed it. They
did.
put a gun to its head and pulled the trigger. And we'll probably never know exactly what they were thinking when they thought that was a good idea.
Especially considering, like, you had Mass Effect 1 was great. 2, great. And then about, like, 90% of 3 was great.
Yeah, but ultimately, if I had to guess, I'd say it was just undone by writers who thought they were cleverer than they really were.
Yeah, what flavour ice cream do you like? That's Mass Effect comes down to.
For some reason, I didn't really understand. I think it was because I wasn't nearly as enmeshed in internet culture at the time as my flatmates were. That for some reason, the synthesis ending to Mass Effect 3, my flatmate referred to it as the smoke weed every day ending. I think that he felt that it was an ending for filthy hippies.
I guess. But it didn't really matter what ending you chose. All it really did was change the colour of the laser. The outcome was more or less the same.
I think the green laser gave you a post-credit scene.
Yeah,
they all gave post-credit scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
No, actually, there was the red laser one that gave you the extra one. Red's the one that I picked.
Right. Yeah, it was an ending so bad they actually had to go back and redo it. And even then, it's still unsatisfying.
No, I felt that they redid it, intentionally making it worse.
Given how
it was
ham-fisted that whole thing was, I could believe it.
In my opinion, it was an intentional FU to all the people who didn't like their super clever ending.
Yeah. And then it's all okay. That ending was unsatisfying. Let's go to a new galaxy where everybody's made of plastic.
How is that different to the old galaxy?
They're made of plastic and T-posing.
I see. And they're somehow able to climb stairs while T-posing and not bending at the knees in any way.
It's quite impressive, actually, yes. But also with their eyeballs poking out the wrong side of their head. Because that was a thing.
I suppose that will be taken up by Ubi.
Oh, boy.
They've also got a talent for that kind of thing.
They really do. Unfortunately, I think Ubi has peaked with their bugs. That was during Black Flag, with the ships rising out of holes in the ocean.
Speaking of just Ubi things, is Beyond Good and Evil still being made? Like, is that a thing?
They haven't said anything about it recently, and honestly, after the reception to their big twist where Jade turned up and she's evil for no apparent reason, I'm assuming they're sitting in the corner with a head on their bucket on their head, and we'll just leave it at that.
What a twist!
What a twist! It's a twist that nobody wanted. You can't have the hero of the previous game suddenly show up as the bad guy without a damn good reason.
I don't think that they are particularly concerned about that.
Especially when it seems like the protagonist of this one is a potty-mouthed monkey.
Everything about that makes me cringe. I didn't play the original. I don't know if there's something in there that's really charming that I just don't know about. But
I did play the original, and I loved it. Like, Jade herself is kind of a bit of a blank slate, but she's, action game protagonist. That's kind of the territory. But a lot of the other characters were really great. The world was a lot of fun. The soundtrack was fantastic. and you could drive a hovercraft vertically up cliffs if you weren't careful. So that was a fun time as well.
Was there a cringy monkey?
There was no cringy monkeys. There was a cringy blonde, super stereotypical buffoon type character, and he was a lot of fun and an idiot.
I see.
And yeah, he went through the usual arc of downfall and redemption. So yeah, the first game was great. It hasn't aged well though. But yeah, you look at the new trailers for the sequel, prequel, something, and it just doesn't look the same. It's like a completely different franchise.
Yeah. I normally my assumption is when a game ends up in development hell this long, because it's actually been a long time now.
Yeah.
That they are the ones who don't know what the game is as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have started out trying to do justice to a cult classic, and they don't have any idea how to do it.
Yeah. I think this is like the third attempt at it.
Let's see. The original Beyond Good and Evil was released in 2003, and the sequel was announced in 2017. Officially announced.
Officially
in
2017.
Announced. So yeah, they've had 3 years and have produced zero gameplay.
Yeah. You got those 2 really flashy trailers, and that's about it. All right. Do we have anything else to be getting on with?
Vol, you found a thing about Cookie.
What?
About Cookie Z from Lab Zero.
Oh right, I put that there because I figured that you are more likely to talk about it than me, since it's about fighting stuff.
Well, okay, I can give you the quick rundown. So, the fighting game community has reached a consensus among themselves that rollback netcode is, with GGPO, is way better than delay netcode, because these people are insane people that want to have tournaments online, and that's more feasible with rollback netcode than with delay netcode, even though delay looks better for the casual player and isn't noticeable.
These people sound like Street Fighter players.
They are.
There you go.
So Arc System Works brought in a bunch of people that had done GGPO rollback netcode to try and get a workable system in. And one of those people was Cookie Z, or Mike Z. So Cookie we're helping them with the development, and he has now been suspended from work helping Arc System Works while Lab Zero's tomfoolery is happening with Skullgirls, and he's been accused of sexual assault along with everybody else at that company.
Reset the clock.
Well, in this case, it seems like a Me Too trash fire.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cookie did anything. In fact, I rather doubt it. But
I'd rather doubt it as well, admittedly. But
he made this bed for himself by setting up a woke as crazy company.
Yeah, I don't know or care whether or not he's guilty at this point. It's like the whole Me Too thing has run its course, and the only thing that it has accomplished is to ensure that people will think twice before believing women. Like that's what they accomplished. The precise opposite of what they thought they were accomplishing.
Yeah.
And the biggest offender, I think, was probably the Kavanaugh hearings.
Yep, the Kavanaugh hearings and the immediate discrediting of the exact same thing when we had somebody that claimed to personally know the dude and was actually around him with Biden. What's her name? Tara Reid.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that disappeared immediately, and that the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were a thing, has ended Me Too being a credible way of thinking about things forever.
It showed everybody that it was and is merely a political tool. It was never about helping women, and has only managed to harm them.
Yeah, because now, honestly, I am I've not gotten into any relationships with anyone since Me Too started. And it can be traced back to when Me Too started. And while it was not the reason at the time, it's a contributing factor now towards avoiding getting in a relationship.
Yeah, you don't know what it might cost you in the end because this toxic culture has been built up.
Yep. Too dangerous. So yeah, that is that's Cookie. He made his own bed. And now
I think we're going to see this befall a lot of companies over the course of time.
Yep. Eventually, people are going to have to move away into either a culture that doesn't accuse people just that they don't like because they're mad, and that's going to have to be seen as evil at a cultural level, and people are going to have to stop doing it, or we're going to have to give men some kind of protections from accusations without proof.
Yeah, this is sort of a cultural erosion thing, really, and I don't know how you turn back the clock on it because the problem here, the real boneheaded thing was this idea that there's no problem taking this to its logical extreme, like the normal assumption that most people make is that the far extremes of most things should be viewed with suspicion at best. And the assumption in the Me Too scenario was that, well, there is this, they believe that this current extreme is in place where women are never believed if they report that they've experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault or whatever. And so obviously the natural remedy for this is to go to the complete opposite extreme and believe everything that anybody accuses anyone of doing. How could you possibly conclude that that was a stable way to rectify the situation?
Yeah.
Now you'd have to pay the consequences as a culture.
Yep. And the people that bought into it, this is the future you had to look forward to. Some girl will get mad at you for some reason. She's going to accuse you of something. She's not going to have any evidence, but too bad, your life's destroyed. Have fun.
Yeah, getting off into the weeds a bit there.
Well, it's
you
related
just
to
give
gaming.
us something to bring us back.
I'm trying to find something, but
That's
I'm
what
not
you're here
finding
for.
anything. We've talked about everything, I think, so it might be time to go home.
Yeah, it was just a kind of a crappy week, all told.
It really
Like
was.
there was a bunch of financials from Blizzard Activision, but to be honest, they more or less sounded like the last set of financials I heard from them.
Yeah, you can sum that all up by just the single toll of a lonely bell.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just, it comes down to they are desperately hanging on that Shadowlands will save World of Warcraft, otherwise it ceases to be a viable commercial proposition.
Spoiler warning, it won't.
Well, see, I suppose that the interesting implication of that is that for years and years people have burbled about WoW killers, and for years and years people have burbled back that there's no such thing as a WoW killer, and the only thing that can kill WoW is WoW. And guess which group's going to turn out to be right? In a sense, it's neither of them, because it's not really WoW killing WoW. It's probably going to simply be that type of thing has run its course, and you can only trot out the same sort of idiot decisions so many times before people just aren't that interested anymore. So it will be killed by its corporate masters. And I can't shake the feeling that if the Blizzard that actually made World of Warcraft was still the Blizzard making World of Warcraft today, while it probably would have gone into decline simply because that's just what the genre is doing, it probably wouldn't be such a sad, tragic one.
Yeah.
But, I mean, most of the talent that Blizzard used to have are now working for other companies.
Brand new companies.
Yeah, brand new companies that didn't exist a month ago. But maybe we will see something new and interesting come out from those quarters. So there's certainly talent there. I mean, that talent has sort of been unproductive in a sense for a long time now, but maybe that doesn't have to be that way. Maybe they can still come back and do something interesting.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, the bits and pieces of Shadowlands I've seen, it's just they're making the same mistakes that they made every single time, and they've learned absolutely nothing.
Well, they're Blizzard, and that's how Blizzard do.
It is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, let's pack up, shall we?
Yep, I'm getting distracted by political stuff while I'm trying to find us more stuff to talk about.
That's a bad omen.
I found
So-
a collage of all the stuff Ben Shapiro said that turned out to be wrong in 2016.
Basically everything then.
So, Fern, are you going to get dragged into Shadowlands? Like, are you going to allow yourself to be suckered?
Not if I can help it. I've already got one MMO which I kind of poke at every now and again. I have a second one I really would want to poke at every now and again, but it requires actually invested time. So unless I can deal with both of those, then Shadowlands isn't getting a look in.
What if all those people that you play those games with decide that they want to play Shadowlands? Because that's the scenario that actually plays out in practice. Is
Yeah.
not that you decide you want to play it, but that you get dragged there by a whole bunch of people who insist that they need +1.
Yeah, like the BDO guild I'm with at the moment, if they decided to jump ship and decide one day to suddenly say, we're going to play, like, I don't know, Eve for a while, I'd probably just go, yeah, okay, fine. Shadowlands is kind of the let's not get crazy point of that. As much as I'd like to go back to how things were with WoW and have the good times that I had in WoW, those good times aren't there anymore. They've been surgically exercised. Just, ugh. So yeah. I mean, I still know a few people in WoW who still play the game, even, 15 odd years later, but which is kind of weird, but yeah, I don't think going back to WoW is on the docket.
Yeah, it's all about who tries to convince you to come back
Yeah.
and how much sway they have in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling that Aristotle won't be listening to Emerus next time.
Nope, not gonna happen.
Yeah,
Not
you
listening.
learned that lesson.
Yeah. Well, back then it was a dude that I knew way back then. Hadn't talked to him in forever. Oh, I remember you from back before you went in the military. Oh, you're back now. Okay, I'll play WoW with you a little bit.
Yeah.
No. And most of my friends, I don't have the sheer mass of people that would drag me back. I don't think enough exist that I still have a high enough standing in my friend circles to convince me to poke at the game again.
Yeah.
I was convinced to poke at WoW Classic, but that's not a hard sell for me.
No, WoW Classic I think was definitely worth a look.
Yeah, but even that only lasted a month and a half.
Yeah, I'm not going to rule it out as a complete impossibility that I'll go back and play at least a little bit of it, but it's just I feel absolutely no desire to.
Yeah, it's just my life has been so much better since I cut all these obligatory scheduled games out of my system, including FGO, and cutting that down to any gacha game and just cut it down to I'll play when I feel like it. Just excising myself of these mandatory games on a schedule has freed up so much of my time and my brain space that I don't want to go back to how it was when I was playing any of them.
Yep. All right. Let's get out of here, shall we?
All right. Yeah, the second half of the show, I've been keep getting distracted by political stuff, so I was here in spirit for a few paragraphs of y'all talking. I was literally distracted by
Much
a few
like
games.
Joe Biden's voters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
There it is.
We only think his rallies were empty and had no people, you see. We just couldn't see all the invisible ghosts at them. There is key voting demographic.
Half the time Biden was in the cupboard anyway.
Oh my.
It was
Anyway.
more like 9/10 of the time.
Yes. Just anyway, do the
Me and Bob will,
things.
yeah, we will attempt to get you a political show as soon as we can. We haven't talked about scheduling it since Vol can't do it this week. On the days we have been doing it, but we'll figure it out after the show today, and we'll get you something as soon as possible. Look in the announcements threads if we have any major updates about it, and for posts of the show. So we'll let you know as soon as that's ready to go. Any closing comments?
I'm actually starting to get time to do stuff again.
It's not going to last.
No, probably won't.
It never seems to somehow.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we're out of cowboy season at least for the most part, so we're
Yeah,
on
but
the
it's just going to be
downhill.
like Christmas party season soon.
Christmas parties. I don't think are going to be a big thing this year.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought
'cause-
Queensland wasn't scared of the coof.
it's not so much the coof. It's just they've been on steady decline for the last few years. Like people just don't really care for them all that much anymore because it's like you go into a bar or a restaurant and make awkward conversation with people you spend all day with, and you'd rather not.
I've been skipping them, to be honest.
And people are just starting to realize that unless you've got kids there or you're all actually friends, then Christmas parties are really just awkward and weird.
Yeah, it's like I don't dislike or resent my workmates, but there are things I would rather do with my free time than go to
Exactly.
a restaurant that I didn't choose, eat food that I didn't really want to eat, and talk to people who aren't really the people I want to talk to on my off time.
Exactly.
I mean, why would you talk to them when you can come home, sit at your computer, and have me spam memes at you?
I do look forward to the meme spam.
So, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we'll see y'all next week, I guess. I don't think we got anything else.
Nope.
All right, folks. Sayonara. Bye-bye.